Every few generations, humanity finds itself at an inflection point. We create systems to manage complexity, governments, institutions, corporations, and then slowly we start to serve them instead of the other way around. These systems begin with good intentions. They promise stability, safety, and fairness. But over time, they become rigid, self reinforcing, and extractive. They learn to preserve themselves, even when the people inside them start to struggle. That's where we are now. The global financial system, this massive interconnected web of trust, code, and paperwork, is one of the most brilliant and devastatingly efficient machines humanity has ever built. But it's efficient in the wrong direction. It extracts value instead of distributing it. It commodifies time, rewards speculation, and punishes patience. And somehow we've all learned to call that normal. People who want to understand the deeper story behind Bitcoin and what it represents beyond headlines, hyper price charts, because that's the real story of Bitcoin. It isn't about money, it's about systems, how we build them, how they fail, and how they can be redesigned. In 2008, while the world was reeling from financial collapse, an anonymous technologist named Satoshi Nakamoto quietly posted a white paper on an obscure cryptography mailing list. It was just 9 pages long. There were no sponsors, no corporate backers, and no roadmap. The title was Bitcoin, a peer to peer electronic cash system. What that document proposed was revolutionary, but not in the way people think. It wasn't an anti government rant or a call to chaos. It was a design document, a technical proposal for solving one of the oldest problems in economics. How can you prove that a digital asset hasn't been spent twice without trusting a third party to check? That was the heart of it, the double spend problem. Before Bitcoin, all digital money required a middleman, a bank, a payment processor, a company that vouched for your transaction. You had to trust them to do it honestly, not to fail, and not to fall victim to fraud or corruption. Satoshi's insight was simple but profound. You could replace trust with proof. Instead of depending on human promises, you could design a process, a self verifying system that made dishonesty mathematically impossible. That's what the white paper outlined. And it wasn't just a new form of money, it was a new kind of truth machine. The Bitcoin network went live on January 3rd, 2009, with the now famous Genesis block. Embedded in that block was a line of code, a message that was from the Times of London. It read, "The Times, 03 Jan 2009, Chancellor on brink of second bailout for banks." It wasn't just a timestamp, it was a statement, a quiet act of engineering protest. In 9 pages and a few thousand lines of code, Nakamoto created a financial system that could function without intermediaries, without central authority, and without trust. It's not perfect, it's not frictionless, but it works. And it's still working today. In fact, almost 17 years later. Isn't that extraordinary? When I first read the white paper, I wasn't thinking about cryptocurrency. I was thinking about the process. I'm a technologist, and now a doctoral candidate studying how organizational and financial systems evolve. And what struck me about Bitcoin wasn't its code, it was its architecture. It's the first system in human history that doesn't assume virtue, it enforces it through structure. It's designed so that every participant verifies every other participant automatically. There's no gatekeeper, no overseer, no trusted authority. The trust lives inside the process itself. That idea completely changed me because it made me realize the failures we see in economics, in governance, even in education, they're not just moral problems, they're design problems. And if that's true, then the future doesn't belong to the loudest or the richest. It belongs to the people who learn how to design better systems. That's why I founded the Bitcoin Pivot. It's a learning hub, a community, and a movement. It's a space for people who want to understand Bitcoin not just as a technology, but as a metaphor, a proof of concept that systems can evolve, that trust can be engineered, and that fairness can be designed. It's for people who sense that something is deeply off, who work hard, play by the rules, and yet feel the ground literally shifting beneath them. We live in a world where everything is accelerating, except equality. Information moves at the speed of light, but our salaries crawl. Automation drives efficiency, but somehow humans keep working harder for less. And no generation understands that better than Gen Z. Generation Z is the first to grow up fully online, connected, self taught, hyper aware. They're entrepreneurial, collaborative, and skeptical of authority. They've seen the promise of institutions collapse in real time, from the 2008 crisis to pandemic mismanagement to climate inaction. They are the most connected and the most disillusioned generation in modern history. For them, Bitcoin isn't just a speculative asset, it's a symbol, a way to imagine systems that aren't built to exploit them. They understand intuitively that the current model, work endlessly, pay taxes, incur debt, hope for stability, is just not sustainable. The social contract has expired. But they also understand that we can't burn it all down and start over. We have to pivot, redesign from within, using better principles and better tools. That's the vision behind this movement. The Bitcoin Pivot exists to bring that conversation into focus, to give people language, knowledge, and community to question the old systems and participate in building the new ones. So, what do we actually do? We start with learning. We unpack the white paper line by line, not to memorize it, but to understand what it represents. A blueprint for systems that don't rely on blind trust. We will host discussions and guest interviews with leaders, philosophers, and reformers who are exploring that trustless design and what it looks like in different contexts, from finance to governance to artificial intelligence. We move to connecting because the next era of progress isn't going to come from individual genius. It's going to come from collaboration. We connect people who care about fairness, process design, and transparency, whether they're developers, teachers, or artists. And then we build. We help builders that embody these principles. Decentralized identity systems that give individuals control over their data. Transparent supply chains that trace value from creation to consumption. Peer-led education networks where verification replaces credentialism. All of this flows from the same core question that birthed Bitcoin itself. Can we create systems that don't require trust because they are trustworthy by design? That's the question driving everything we do at the Bitcoin Pivot. And I want to be clear, this isn't about hype. It's not about speculation or market caps or memes. This is about ethics, about the intersection of technology and morality. Bitcoin showed us that transparency scales, that honesty can be written into code. Now the challenge is to take that insight beyond the blockchain, to use it as a lens for rethinking how we live and work. Because the same logic applies everywhere. When we make processes transparent, power balances shift. When we automate verification, corruption loses ground. When we remove unnecessary intermediaries, value flows back to the people who create it. That's not ideology, that's systems design. And that's what the Bitcoin Pivot stands for. I often say that Bitcoin isn't the revolution. The revolution is the mindset that made Bitcoin possible to begin with. It's the realization that trust, fairness, and collaboration aren't moral gifts handed down from authority. They are design outcomes, the result of how we structure our systems. If our processes waste human time, it's because no one valued that time enough to protect it. But the beauty of design is that it can be changed. Systems can pivot. That's what this podcast and this movement is really about. If you've ever felt trapped in a loop of working harder for less, if you've felt that your time, your creativity, your energy are being squeezed by systems that give you little in return, if you've ever looked at the world and thought, there has to be a better way, then this is your place. Because what Bitcoin started as code, we're continuing it as community. We're here to study, to build, and share one central belief that the next era of human systems, whether financial, educational, or social, will be built on proof, transparency, and participation. It's not about decentralization versus centralization. It's about humanization. Building systems that respect time, truth, and trust as fundamental resources. And that's the pivot. I'm Kyle Shirkness, and this is the Bitcoin Pivot. I thank you for being here. Let's learn, connect, and build together because the future of trust won't be managed by organizations. It'll be designed by people like you. Welcome to the Pivot.